Oh, baby. Ow! What is... I'm going to do a shimmy. Shaken. It is Golden Mike, episode 135. Now, here's the deal. It may be your lunch break. And you might be taking a lunch break by yourself and watching John and I. And in the back of your mind, you're saying, how the hell am I going to move up in this job that I'm about to go back to after my lunch break? That's why John is here. Or you might be thinking to yourself, I'm kind of stuck right now. I am not sure where the next move is in my life. I don't know how to up-level that. That's why John is here. It's Golden Mike 135 with John General Neral, or if he doesn't like you, Funeral Neral. You take the FU out. You add the F, or John adds the FU if he doesn't like you. John, we just talked literally for the first time 3 seconds ago.
Yeah, we did.
It feels like we've known each other for a long time, man.
I know. It's amazing how we've just been connected through certain people in different groups, Mark. And like we both kind of said, like we feel we know each other, but yet this is like the first time that we've had chance to really just connect in person like this. So thanks again. This is a great opportunity.
Oh, it's amazing. In the pre-show, which was like 1 minute long, or the pre-interview, which was like a minute long, I was like, John, it's good to see you again? Oh, no, yeah. We've never met. Right. And then it was like this familiar experience, and then at the end I was like, wait, how do I say your last name?
Yeah, and it's not the easiest last name to pronounce, right? So a lot of times people will look at it and they'll say Neral or Neral, and it's why I said to you, like, so it's that short E, so it's a Neral, which is like general, and just kind of put that in there. But it's not the easiest name to pronounce, I think, which is why it's so important to make sure that I always get people's names right as well, because I just don't have the easiest last name in the world.
Well, I feel as someone who's been called Cordon his whole life. Yeah. Right, like that's why it's a big deal for me as well. Here's the dealio. Our guest today, you already know him as John Neral. I know him as leadership career coach. Mm-hmm. I know him as a person who 25 years has been developing talent. He's been doing it through training, directing, educating, supervising. That bowling pin is very real. In the back, he is I call you a pro bowler,
yeah,
right?
But yeah, that's right.
So you are a pro bowler.
Yeah, I won a title back in 2010 on the PBA regional tour, and Mark, I am super excited because 2 days from now I hit my 50th birthday, and I get to be a rookie all over again. So I'm actually going to go out and bowl some senior tour stops, and I get to be a rookie. Like, how awesome is that? So I'm really excited.
How awesome is it? Pretty damn. It's pretty damn awesome. I have to stop the show in its tracks right now. Favorite Big Lebowski character?
Oh my gosh.
Because I know you've watched that movie.
Yeah, I mean, the movie is so good. You know, it's like John Goodman just makes me chuckle, right? So it's just.
We'll go with Goodman. For some reason, I imagined you as that, that guy that licks the ball. He's super arrogant, right? He's got the tight pants, showing off his goods. But seriously, before we get into everything, I just wanted to take time to acknowledge, like, John, it's really cool to actually be interfacing with you and instead of doing it in different ways, seeing you from afar. Now, here's the deal. For those of you who are in John's camp and you're meeting me for the first time, name is Marc Cordon, positive psychology coach, founder of the Make Money Coaching Program, Chief Disruptive Officer of the Joy Revolution, but more importantly, all I get to do on a regular basis is I get to ask myself, people on the show, today it's going to be John, 2 questions. That's how simple positive psychology is, people. Number 1 is how happy are you today? And number 2 is how much are you living in your purpose? So John, that's what I'm going to start off with. How happy are you, and how much are you living in your purpose, my friend?
Mark, I am so happy and overcome with just a huge sense of gratitude and blessings for things that are going on in my life. I can honestly tell you I have never been happier personally and professionally than I am right now at this moment. And I think that's why you and I connect really well, is that we just kind of appreciate each other's energy. Yeah. But I have always been the person who has looked at the glass as more than half full. And just kind of seen it that way. As you know, my mom used to say growing up, like, it's a blessing and a curse, John. But to me, it's just nothing but blessings. So yeah, I'm unbelievably happy right now.
So there was never John in the like brooding phase. There was never a brooding phase of John, or like the emo phase where like
no, there was none of that. Yeah,
I love it. Oh, I absolutely love it. Now, here's what I want to throw out for those of you watching live or on the replay. If you're feeling like John Neral today, John the General, if you're feeling like John, you're feeling happy and you're living in your full purpose, amazing. John, lift that heart up and over there in Virginia. Hit that heart. Let us know that you are alive. Don't be afraid. Oh, yeah, I see you. I'm adding you to the broadcast, Jorge. Jorge from Puerto Rico tuning in right now. It's good to see you, Jorge. Now, here's the other thing, though. Positive psychology, just like life, is not about the 24/7 shits and giggles. It is not about it is not about constantly being happy. It's not about Taco Tuesday every single day. A lot of people think that. But the thing is that you may be thinking to yourself, you know what, John, you know, Mark, like last week I was happy. Something is completely off this week, and I don't know what the hell it is, right? Or you might be thinking to yourself, you know what, John, I was in a job for 30 years that I've loved, I've been passionate about, that brought me happiness, and I'm off. Something feels off. I feel like I'm searching again. That's cool. Your heart beats just like John and I's. Life is about the ups, the downs, and the all-arounds. That's what joy is about. It's about feeling that and being able to move through all of those things quickly. So, if you're kind of feeling off today, let John and I entertain you. Just have a good time and watch the show. Give us a thumbs up, though, and let us know that you're alive, because one day you're going to be telling your story of how things were off and you got it back on track. And that's what coaches like John are there for as well. So let me throw out the third thing, and then we'll get to John's story.
All right.
John, if you're feeling hopeful today, that's the number one thing that I work with on people. There is another button down there. I see you, Carrie Ann. I see you, George. I see you guys watching right now. Yeah, I see you hitting the hearts. There's another button down there. That button is called the wow face. Yeah. And John, in his 49th year on this earth, is going to show you what the wow face looks like. Let's do it, John. Oh my God, I am not a crook. I am not a crook.
No, that's this. This is the...
Oh, okay. I could only see the two fingers. I was like, he went into Nixon on us. Hit the wow face. Given all of that, John, I love having you on the show already.
Same.
Let's do this. I want to start off with this question for you. What's your story, bro?
Yeah, it's you know, Mark, I often say that I am here in this moment because of the totality of my experiences, and that I could not be with you at this moment if it wasn't for everything that has happened to me along the way. And, you know, it's not all like unicorns, you know, burping glitter and farting rainbows and all those kind of things, right? So, I mean, because we all have our stuff, but... You know, what I am so grateful for, though, when I think about the work that I get to do, is that my work throughout my career has primarily been aligned to my core values of service and connection. Mm-hmm. When I got into my 25-year career in education, I loved being a student. I love that whole passion for learning. And I remember having a faculty advisor of mine in college who said to me, "You should teach." And I was like, really? And he's like, "You should teach." I got my bachelor's degree in psychology. I thought I was going to put the shingle up and everything like that. And had some experiences and was like, yeah, I don't think I'm like emotionally ready for all of this. So I ended up teaching. I taught for 2 years in a private girls Catholic high school in Towson, Maryland. Got out of that job, did some stuff, kind of spun the wheels, and I was working in a bowling center thinking I was going to get a job in the bowling industry, right? And you want to talk about having a boss who was so influential. My boss, Kurt, he said to me, he's like, look, he goes, if you want to learn the bowling industry, I'll give you this job. You can work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5:30. If you don't like it, the only thing I ask you do is do the right thing and give me 2 weeks notice. No hard feelings. You want to talk about setting ground rules and how we show up professionally and energetically. Like Kurt taught me like the rules in terms of how to play in that regard. And his wife, who was a 6th grade teacher, would come into the bowling center to pick him up and drive him home. And she would like tell me stories about being in the classroom. And I missed it so much that I was on the job for 3 weeks. I went to him. I said, Kurt, I'm done. I'm going to give you 2 weeks notice. And I'm enrolling in graduate school so I can go get my master's in teaching. And that's what I did. And, you know, I had wonderful parents. I was fortunate enough where I could move back home and go to graduate school. Yeah. I got a job teaching in northern New Jersey, embarrassingly next to the Real Housewives of New Jersey.
Embarrassingly?
I only say
proudly.
That because it was like, you know, it was like in their heyday and stuff like that. So there was just a lot of stuff going on. Like you just kind of knew like that's where you were. But it was a great district to work in. I'm, you know, people I worked with, I'm still really, really dear friends with. But, you know, Mark, when I talk with my clients about creating that next advancement opportunity, I was in that job for 14 years. I felt as if I was getting stale. And so if I think about those core values about service and connection, I felt like I was dialing it in. And it wasn't fair to those middle school students that I had that I was teaching math to. I mean, I knew I was still doing a good job, but I didn't feel like it was fair to them.
Yep.
I wanted to do something more with adult learners, with adult educators. And in the midst of all of it, I had gone on vacation and ended up meeting my now husband. And so we had this long distance relationship for 2 years. He was living down in Washington, D.C., I was in New Jersey. And, you know, we just made it that point.
Right away. That's...
You know, we kind of made it that point to just travel back and forth. And I said, I will not come down to DC until I get a job. And so long story, a little bit shorter, right? I got that next advancement opportunity. I went to go work for DC Public Schools. I managed a team of 21 instructional coaches across 13 middle schools. And it was that like full immersion into doing coaching on an instructional level that just kind of like lit the fire for me more and more. And I found ways that I could serve the people on my team and help develop them and help foster that kind of growth. And from that job, it churned the next one, and then it churned the one after that, where I ended up working for an educational nonprofit for 5 years, primarily doing training and staffing direction. And I had every single intention of bringing an instructional coaching program there. Yeah. And it just wasn't in the cards. You know, it just wasn't something that was meant to be. And I remember walking into my VP's office that day, and I was like shaking walking down the hallway because I knew what I was about to do that was bigger than anything I had ever done, which was leave my job, which I was happy with and I was comfortable in, to launch my own coaching and public speaking practice. And I remember saying to her, it was with a lot of gratitude that I leave this job, but I'm leaving it because I have an opportunity to serve more people on the outside than I can in here.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she goes, you're right. And she goes, you're meant to do this. She goes, I'm sorry to see you go.
Yeah.
But you go with my blessing. And I'm so grateful for that. And, you know, Mark, I mean, that to me is why next advancement opportunities are so important, because they can be really, really big, or they can be really, really small, whatever kind of lens we want to put on it. But primarily in the professional space, I define that next advancement opportunity as you're looking for the internal promotion, you're looking to step up and lead, or perhaps lead more effectively, or thirdly, you're just done. Like you're done. You're ready to pivot, leverage your talents and expertise, and take them elsewhere. But in my work with my clients, we define what that next advancement opportunity is, whatever that is, and then being able to help coach them through it for whatever's next for them.
You know, I love the proactive nature of that, because how many people, I mean, and I'm including myself in this, have been in jobs where all you can really say is, I want my next advancement opportunity. I don't know what it is. I just don't want to be here anymore. Right. And like they have, and I'm just going to use me. I'm not going to use they.
Sure.
I grew to resent the organization that built me up, and it was a really tough thing because, you know, I also worked in an educational institution for a while. Absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved the kind of autonomy they gave me to teach happiness courses, but also at the same time, there was more. There's something more. I knew I could be doing more, and I just couldn't put a finger on it. And, you know, it changed the way that I showed up. It changed the way that I showed up at work. Because of the resentfulness, I'd show up and I'd kind of, you know, because I could be doing more, I just won't give it to this organization. You know? And so, like, I did not have the emotional intelligence like you had. And I do wish that I had a coach. For some reason, folks are lighting up after they're hearing your story here, John. So I'm going to go and connect with them for a second.
Sure.
I'm going to read Carrie Ann. Carrie Ann put like 90,000 hearts and then a house. It's good to see you, Carrie Ann. We got the IPEC trifecta up in here. George, it's good to see you. George, meet John, George.
Hey, George.
Azriela Yankovic, talking about bowling. Bowling is freaking awesome. You're damn right it's freaking awesome. While I'm reading these, John, I have to ask you. I have to go back to bowling again. I'm fixated on it. How does bowling and life relate? Because usually when someone is that passionate about something, they can see the metaphor of life in the passion.
What the biggest lesson, Mark, I can tell you that I have learned from bowling is how to perform as a team member, but also how to own your own individual responsibilities for where you are at.
From bowling!
From
bowling, son! Yeah. What's going on here? I love it. I absolutely love it. George is loving your insight. Very solid insight. You have to know when you're done. You have to know. And then the next thing is you have to be clear on where the next thing is. Right? Or what that next opportunity is, or creating it, as you like to call it, John. Yeah. George is writing in still. Otherwise, you'll never be able to start burping glitter. Amazing. Courtney is tuning in. Very interesting. I've had a few of those shaky hands meetings recently as well. And yeah, I hear you on resenting and loving where you're at simultaneously. Hashtag goals from Courtney. There's just more of these things popping up. You can watch it in the replay, John. They're all just popping in saying hi. America, good to see you. I'm so into this. I'm in a job slump right now. So it looks like there's a lot of folks, John, that are in that slump who have gone through similar things to both you and I. Love what I do, but like Maslow says, what one thinks that they can be, they must be. Because you go, like, you know what your capacity is and you're not serving at that full capacity. So you're talking about the importance of the importance of creating your next advancement opportunity. And I saw you light up when I said I didn't show up. And I also wrote the word, when you said show up, I wrote the word show up down. So how important is showing up to creating your next job opportunity?
That's such a great question, and thanks for asking that. So to me, how we show up professionally and energetically is everything. And the way I define it is in a 6-step process that I use with my clients. So showing up to me, so show up stands for set ground rules, have intentional conversations, own where you're at, welcome new opportunities, use your genius, and promote and protect your brand. And so in those 6 strategies, when we honor them fully And let me just take a couple seconds and talk a little bit about setting ground rules. Mark, as kids, we learn to play certain games. Like if you and I were to play tic-tac-toe, right? We know that the rule is X goes first and then O goes, and you alternate back and forth putting, an X or an O in a box, okay?
Do you play every sport? I had no idea that X goes first.
Unless it's Hollywood Squares, then Miss O goes first. But that's a whole nother tangent on my game show.
Hollywood Squares reference on the Golden Mic. It's a first. Love it.
But like if we were to play hide and go seek, right? And you said, John, you're going to hide and count to 10. Well, now the question is, how do I count? Do I stand there and go 1, 2, 3, or do I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, ready or not, here I come? And you're like, whoa, wait a minute.
Right.
We have to get really, really clear with what the ground rules are so we know how to play. And oftentimes when we start these new jobs, we either, one, fall into a trap where we think the organization is just going to take care of us and give us everything we need, which as the older we get, we know that just doesn't happen. It doesn't mean it's not well-intentioned. It just doesn't happen. So how do we set those ground rules so we know how to play with everybody? I remember getting really, really more clear with my bosses as I got older, having them tell me what they needed, and then asking for permission if I could share with them what I needed from them.
Ooh, the mark of a good coach as well. So was this at first a difficult conversation to have with your supervisors, or was it something that was part of the organizational culture in which, yes, I feel like I can have this two-way conversation in terms of expectations and ground rules?
As I got older, I got better at it.
Okay.
When I first started working in my 20s, there's that respect component where the boss is going to tell you what to do and you just go ahead and you do it. And, keep in mind, for me, that's 25 years ago. We can have a whole different conversation about meeting the needs of millennials in the workplace right now, which, by the way, I love. And I think there's an energy and a savvy with them that is untapped and unharnessed, and we need to figure that out really, really quickly to build greater connections with them.
You see what he just did right there? He just pitched me the reason why he should be brought back to this show. Well done. We'll see you in episode 137.
But yeah, Mark, I think too, as I got older and I got really clear about what I needed, it was definitely about that connection and building a relationship with my boss. And when I started managing people, it was even easier for me. And I know that may sound a little strange, but it was even easier for me to set those ground rules, because then I could take some of the pressure off the people who were reporting to me and simply say to them, what do you need from me?
John, what are some of the basic ground rules that over the past almost 30 years, 25 plus years of you doing this work, that you've seen folks miss? And it's just it's almost like a, every organization is different, but are there ground rules that you think that every person should have a conversation with their organization with?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest conversations to have right out of the gate is to set those ground rules to clearly define what success looks like, but more importantly, to also define what professional jeopardy looks like. Okay, so I remember talking with a team member on a previous job, and he had been with the organization for a while, and I said to him, I'd like to ask you a favor. I don't know if you can do it or not, but can I ask? He's like, sure. And I said, you seem to know your way around here really well. You get the lay of the land, the organizational culture. If you ever see me do anything that's going to put me in professional harm's way, will you tell me? And the first thing I'm going to tell you is thank you. And I got that from Sherry Harley's book, How to Say Anything to Anyone, which is a phenomenal book if you ever get a chance to read it. It's one of the things in her book. And I remember that when I asked him that, he looked at me and he goes, I will do that on one condition. I said, what's that? He goes, do the same thing for me.
Right on.
I said, okay. And there were so many times in the 5 years that we worked together that all we had to do was look at each other and say, we need to go back to the ground rules, or we need to go back to the agreement, or we need to go back to this conversation. And it totally took the pressure off because we understood that the intention of it was coming from a really, really good place based on what we had discussed.
I really like that because how much tension can build personally in between people as you're having miscommunications down the road, right?
Right.
When you don't have that sort of boundaries set for both what is the success, what does success and what is the rubric that I'll be operating under, so there's no surprises by the time we do the performance review. There's also no surprises when the performance review, whether you're doing it on a process basis or a yearly basis, there won't be surprises when someone's like, look, the performance, was lacking here. It was less than average. And you won't be taking it personally because that was a conversation that you had at the beginning, right? It's also super cool. What I loved is this idea that we have each other's backs here, right? Yeah. Like, and so I absolutely love all of that. I love the fact that people are posting like crazy folk up in here. We got George who's completely lit up here. We got a wedding photo or something with George dancing. And then he's got this. When I consult with businesses to perform corporate turnaround, the first thing I do is set up meetings with every employee, janitor to CEO, and I speak with them about goals, expectations, thoughts on the business, flaws of the business, et cetera, et cetera. I have that conversation with an employee and their direct supervisor. Then I put them in a room together, hash it out, and I'm the mediator. Once it's out in the open, we start square one and build custom employment plans. And George travels quite a bit, speaking and doing amazing things. And what's really cool about what George and John, what you're talking about is you can empower yourself to have this conversation before a George comes in and has to mediate anything. You can start.
It's so important about owning where you're at and taking that responsibility in that regard. It's another way how we show up professionally and energetically. But I mean, I think within the last 10 years, Mark, we've heard so much about the need to manage up.
Yes.
And that's really, really hard for some people because there's a fear or a hesitation about going against their boss or telling them what to do or anything. And I never choose to look at managing up in that way. I choose to look at managing up as a partnership.
Yeah.
Right? I had a boss I was working with where she was so busy that, no joke, like if you sent her an email, it scrolled down out of her view within 30 minutes or to an hour, right? And so part of it was, how do we get communication going if you're not responding to email? And like immediately her first reaction was, I'll respond to my emails. I was like, no, you don't.
Did you snap and point?
Yeah, I was like, no, you don't. Let's acknowledge this.
Okay,
right?
okay. Lesson 1 of managing up: snap and point at your supervisors. Everybody,
we had worked together for a while. There was a lot of trust. There, but we set some ground rules though about how, so if the first email doesn't get answered, send the second one, highlight my name and attach the red exclamation point for it. I was like, great, when you don't answer that one, what do I do? And she's like, I'll answer that one. And I'm like, what do you do? Right? And what we agreed was that I could show up at her office as long as her door was open. And as long as she didn't have a meeting with the president of the company, if I said to her, I need 5 minutes of your time, that she understood the severity of the situation and she would give me her complete and total focus for 5 minutes. And what we were able to do with that team and help transform that team over the next 8 months is some of the best work I've ever done in my career. And it was because we were able to set some ground rules, and you can call it managing up or whatever it was, but we just knew how to play. And I say that we need to know how to play because play's kind of fun, right? Yep. As kids, we play without judgment, or a whole lot of fear or anything like that. When we know how to play, we know how to show up.
Yep. I absolutely love it. I'm nerding out now because both you and I are from the psychology background. So you may remember this, John, in game theory. The first step in game theory is understand what the rules of the game are. Because once you understand the rules of the game, then you can actually play the game. Now, translated to life, those ground rules are things like deadlines. I know that the rule says my deadline is here, so that's how much time I have to operate, right? What I think you're also talking about is those rules aren't sometimes articulated right off the bat.
Right.
And so
Yeah, so like when you're talking about deadlines, right? The project manager may say, if you're running a risk of not meeting the deadline, escalate it.
Yeah.
Right? Well, how soon? like escalate it an hour beforehand and be like, hurt, right? Or is it you need 72 hours or a week? Like we need to get so clear with what the expectations are, so there's no ambiguity whatsoever. And I think for managers and for leaders as well as for followers, if we can just get really, really clear on what those ground rules are, it's such a great example with game theory. We just didn't know how to play.
Yep. So let me ask you this. Let's say that someone who's watching right now and hasn't developed or doesn't necessarily feel the trust with the supervisor yet. Maybe you're going through your orientation right now, right? Or maybe something has happened in which trust feels like it's breached, and then there's the tension between the boss. How do you then have the conversation about setting the ground rules if you're new, or having I think is an even harder conversation of saying, look, it's been like a year and a half, and certain ground rules haven't been set, and it's affecting my ability to contribute to the organization, right?
Sure.
How do you have those kind of conversations where if you snap and point, you're gonna be at the bowling alley, man.
Right, exactly.
With the Lebowski.
You gotta know, do you know who Dr. Dean Hinitz is?
I don't think I do.
All right, so Dr. Dean Hinitz is one of the top bowling sports psychologists, and I'm gonna steal a line from him. See, I roped you in there. You and I are gonna go bowling someday, right? All right, cool. So, what Dr. Dean talks about is, as an athlete, how do you trust yourself in sport? If you get up there and you've got to make the shot, how do you trust your abilities? And what he says, I love this. He says, trust is repeated behavior over time. Trust is repeated behavior over time. And when I take that definition of trust and I bring it into the workplace, every single opportunity we are given is a chance to connect or disconnect, to build trust or tear away trust. And so for those people who have a relationship with their supervisor or a colleague where trust has been broken or trust has been frayed, to start small and find ways to see if trust can be rebuilt. Sometimes it can't, and we need to acknowledge that. But if you have a boss whom you're directly reporting to who has a very active hand in your performance review that gets tied into your compensation and they recommend you for promotion, you can't really go in there and be like, I think our trust is broken, and you have to kind of be careful with that, right? So find ways to build that trust slowly in a way to regain it. And it needs to acknowledge that there has to be an investment in time in order to do that. right? So, sometimes people are like, well, I just don't trust my boss. Well, now we need to figure out whether or not we can salvage that trust.
Yeah.
And if we can, we need to figure out what the steps are in terms of rebuilding it. We can't go from 0 to 80 without getting all the numbers in between.
That is so good, and I love that idea of trust. And Dean Hiddick's, that's the next book that I might be picking up, a Dean Hiddick's book, because this idea of trust that Hiddick's talked about is not only one that you can trust yourself on, right? Showing up and being able to deliver in the alley, but also being able to navigate the world and be able to deliver on a repeated basis. What Hiddick's is also talking about is, for those of you who are going to tune in tomorrow, we're talking about messaging and branding. That's your brand. Your brand is your promise. And so you're delivering on a regular basis is your personal brand. Even if you're in an organization, they know you as the standby, the go-to person, and that's how you can rebuild. I love it. You can rebuild trust.
Right. And I mean, one of the biggest things to me that breaks down trust, and I have found that oftentimes people always don't think it's that big of a deal. It's when people say, I'm going to go back to my office and I'm going to send you this email as soon as I get there. They don't. Right? Because we don't know what happens between their office and yours. Okay? So maybe they're walking down the hallway and someone got them and they got pulled into a meeting, whatever it is. But it's that acknowledging that if somebody is there waiting on the other end for something you promised them they were going to get, and you don't deliver in the time frame that you said, you break trust. Yeah. And people sometimes think, well, that's not that big of a deal. Trust me, it's a big deal, because it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And when people don't trust you, they will find ways to not trust you.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. That you once you get attributed as the untrustworthy person, people will find what you not to trust about you. They'll make shit up even. Right. At that point, and it becomes a death spiral that you go into.
Yeah. And then they start thinking, what is it about me? Am I not important? Do they not like me? Do they not care about me? They're not invested in my success. The whole, like you said, that whole death spiral happens. And now all of a sudden you got a whole lot of drama you got to deal with that could have easily been solved by quickly sending an email and saying, I got pulled into something. I'll respond to you by the end of the day.
Yeah. And that something was Facebook. Shouldn't have done it, John. So for those of you who are watching right now and just promised your coworker that you'd email them something, we'll give you a break to walk away from the show for 30 seconds, send the email out so you don't deteriorate the damn trust, but come back, because right now I want you, John, to tell us about this idea of showing up. So for those of you tuning in, a badass idea of showing up, which means set ground rules. What is H? Have
intentional conversations.
Take over. O.
Yeah. O is own where you're at. W is welcome new opportunities. U stands for use your genius. And P stands for promote and protect your brand.
Boom! I want you guys to hit the fire or the love button on that for John coming up with that for us. Now, John, what is the number one tip that you have when it comes to us being able to show up?
Get really, really clear on what your core values are and honor them every single day as best as possible.
Now, I've heard this idea of core values quite a bit. Why are core values so important?
To me, core values are so important, Mark, because they drive everything we do. It's every relationship, every interaction that we have. And because we say it lives in our core, right? It's in our gut. Yeah. It's what is most familiar and most comfortable to us. And I also think it's really important that core values, some are not better than others. They just are what's important to you. And because they're important to you, it clearly defines the work you do, the relationships you have, the interactions you make over and over again. And if we're talking about personal branding in terms of how we show up, it's how people get to know you. And that's why they're so important.
So this was something that was a big deal when I was leaving the big enterprise that I had been working for a while. The idea of core values and integrity, right? Because there's core values and then there's organizational values, right? And how do we sometimes navigate, unless you find the perfect job in which the core values, your core values, are perfectly aligned with both the espoused values of the organization and the practiced ones, because organizations espouse a lot of values and then they don't practice that shit.
Right.
How do you navigate sometimes when, in integrity, when sometimes your core values and the organization's values are off?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So when we take a look at an organization's values as well as their mission and their vision, in order for us to go work there, there needs to be a direct alignment to some of that. It may not be everything, and that's okay. But if you're going there to do quality work and you're going there to invest your time and your energy and your resources to go there and help move the company forward, but also professionally develop yourself, there's got to be something that makes you say in the morning, I get to go to work, right? As opposed to I have to go to work, okay? So, you could work for an organization where their primary motivator is profitability. And you may turn around and say, well, I'm really more about service and support, and profitability isn't necessarily that core value of mine. But from an organizational standpoint, that drive for profitability may be to employ more people, to get their product out more, whatever that may be. It's an opportunity to find the alignment in some way. The flip side of it, Mark, is that, for a lot of people, their core values are family.
Yeah.
And so much of the work that I do at times is that we have to have that conversation around money and compensation, because that money as a motivator also allows you at times to honor your core values, especially when they're family. Or it's about charitable giving. It's about making sure you're being responsible and having a roof over your head, and you're going to the supermarket and getting groceries to put food in your belly. There are all of those kind of things that we have to have the conversation. When I work with people who are in transition, sometimes the conversation we have to have is being very grateful for the fact that you have a job with benefits and a salary that allows you to do the things outside of work until we can more appropriately align the professional life that you can have that more closely aligns to your own core values.
Ooh, gratitude for our first world problems.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Now, core values is so ubiquitous that when you're working with somebody and you're trying to identify some core values, what tips do you have for those of us who are like, okay, now I'm really going to start articulating it? Because I've been operating from a standpoint, John, of my core values are just like when my gut tells me something, it's off. I know that's my core values talking, but I can't articulate that on paper. When you're getting folks to articulate their core values, what are some things that we can think about to help us identify them?
One of the best things, Mark, is to understand what resonates for you that makes you happy, and also what resonates for you that ticks you off. Okay, so that gives us kind of a polarity there, but between the two. But then for us to really lean in more specifically on those things that are of importance, and help the client come up with a definition as far as what that core value actually is. So we don't have just one core value that we live by. We have many core values, but there are those that resonate more strongly for us than others.
Yeah.
And those are the things that whether you call it mindfulness or awareness or being intentional, whatever those things are, it's that opportunity to acknowledge that's what's going on in this space for me. So when it resonates for you down here, just to pause a little bit and go, how do I attach a name to that what I'm feeling?
Gotcha.
Okay. Like when I'm on the highway around here, and I see a lot of distracted drivers and they're into their phones or they're not paying attention to traffic, what comes up for me a lot is about being disrespectful to everybody around you because you're so focused on what you're doing. Okay? And that sometimes is not always pretty, Mark, but like that, I'm working on it. But for me, it's that opportunity just to take that step back and say, okay, well, I don't know necessarily what's going on with them. I'm going to do my best to assume best intentions, but I'm also going to understand that I'm a good driver. I saw that. I was aware of it. I'm safe. Everybody in my car's safe.
Yeah.
And just to move on from there. But yeah, there are days, Mark, when it totally frosts my cupcake. Like it just burns me to no end.
Does it frost your cupcake?
It frosts my cupcake, Mark.
Now, for those of you who are driving around the Virginia area, and if you ever check your phone and look up and see someone honking and then snap and point, no, it's this man. It's the general. It's the general. He's driving around Virginia pointing at people. I absolutely love it, but
now, my cheeks haven't hurt this much from laughing in a long time. This has been great.
Good. Well, what I love about the conversation as well is, I mean, we're laughing our way through this, but these are some morsels, people. Like, are you picking up on what he's throwing down? Like, the fact that your core values can start off with something as simple as what energizes me and what drains me. Yeah. Okay, I'm setting my continuum there. And then usually what energizes me has something to do with my core values. That's why I'm activated. And what drains me has something to do with my core values being activated as well. And so to be able to first maybe understand the embodiment of what that feels like, and then to put a name to it afterwards, I wouldn't say that it makes the process simpler, but it is cool to have a process instead of being like, I don't know. I go into existential crisis about like, I don't know my core values and one's off with this organization, right?
And I think one of the things too, like where you and I resonate as coaches though, is that there's a real practicality and definition behind what it is that we do for our clients to help them get that kind of awareness. You know, it's not like we're walking around with the guitar and being like strum core values, you know, or anything like that, right? Because some people have that perception.
You don't know what my first year of coaching was like, my friend. It was bad, son. Cordon did anything he could that first year. But no, you don't usually see someone strumming the guitar, talking about chord.
But it's that opportunity to help make what may seem a little abstract or untouchable a little more concrete.
Yep.
And when we're able to help our clients get more concrete with those things, that's where we get to help them move forward.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So, by the way, it's 52 after the hour. By the way, this is called flow, people. We are overbooked with comments, so we will get back to each and every comment after the show because there's so many things going on here. I do have a question from Courtney, who asked earlier, and I've been watching you, Courtney. How do you take the defensiveness out of it when you're working or having a conversation with super reactive people?
For me, Courtney, what has always worked has been to simply ask them, what did you mean by that? Mm-hmm. Because I could guess all day long, and it's understandable to kind of have that immediate reaction. It's not necessarily going to help the situation. I've asked people, what did you mean by that? Like, help me understand exactly what you meant by that. And they may get a little snarky or snippy or whatever it is, but it's about whittling through that defensiveness to get to the real intent. And that for me is what's been helpful. But the key thing is for me, is just to pause, breathe a little bit, and then ask him that question.
Gotcha. Amazing. I have a final question for you in terms of now from the manager's standpoint. What is the importance of all of this when it comes to the manager? And we do have a show coming up in terms of managers working with, like, how can we bring the best out of millennials, right? Mm-hmm. But for managers who work with young professionals, like, what are some of the things that they need to keep in mind as they think about the showing up and the core values?
The biggest thing that I could share, Mark, is place a high value on connecting with your millennial employees. And that connection needs to be in a variety of modalities. So it is not necessarily about ensuring hand-holding or micromanagement, but it is ensuring that you are checking in with them face-to-face, on the phone, virtually. It is about making sure that they have what they need, and you also are listening to what they have to offer. One of the biggest things I think that is so empowering about this millennial workforce right now is that they have a huge value around connection. They want to be a part of something that's bigger than they are, but they also want to know that they're connected in a way where their talents and expertise are valued. And what we are seeing now, especially within the last 5 years, is that there is a tenacity and a savvy with this millennial workforce that if they don't feel that connection, they walk. And they walk quicker than any other generation before, where their attitude is, I'm out of here, I'm going to go find another job. And they do. So if there's not a connection to the work that they're doing, the people they're working with, the people who are leading them, and the organization as a whole, they will walk. And research shows that when you invest a year in terms of onboarding and training them, on average, $25,000 is walking out the door and going to another company because you failed to connect.
Yep. There is a cost to it. There is a cost to that. Absolutely love it. John, it's 4 till the hour, my friend. It's 4 till the hour, dude. This has been amazing. We talked about Big Lebowski. We talked about we talked about your life. We talked about core values. We talked about the idea of showing up. I know there's a bunch of people who showed up for this one, and John and I want to thank you for it. Hit that heart one last time as John is going to close us off. And also be sure to share this out. Share this out if you really feel like there's someone or something or a bunch of people that John could disrupt. I think there are. Without him snapping and pointing, send this out. Share it out. Now, here's the reason why this is called the Golden Mic, John. Courtney, I'm going to take you off the screen for a second here. So, John, it's called the Golden Mic because I'm going to do a visioning exercise with you.
All right.
We went to a place coaching school that taught us visioning exercises, so we might as well use it. Wait, let me get my guitar first. No, I'm just kidding. So, John, I want you to imagine a golden mic is coming down from your ceiling right now, and it's landing in front of you. Now, this golden mic has the power to translate in every language all across the world, John. The world is listening to what it is that you have to tell us right now. So, John, when I hit the golden mic, your golden mic is live. John, your golden mic starts now.
So, Mark, thank you. And what I simply want to leave with today is that as long as we're continuing to professionally grow and develop, there is a next advancement opportunity for you out there, whatever that is. Whether it's the internal promotion, the leadership opportunity, the chance to pivot, take your talents and expertise elsewhere, or to simply just go do something else, whatever that may be. You are the one that gets to take responsibility for showing up energetically and professionally to own where you're at and figure out what that advancement opportunity is. And if you want some help with that, I'd love to have a conversation with you. I'd love for us to open up a dialogue to see where I can help you where we may be able to take this. But most importantly, that you get to wake up every single day with a feeling inside of you that says you get to go to work instead of I have to go to work. And when you get to go to work that's in direct alignment with your core values, the level of job satisfaction that you will have will be greater than anything you've ever had in your life.
Absolutely love it. John, I want you to take that golden mic and put it in your hand. I want you to feel that weight, right? You're about to turn 50, so I want you to use that 50-year-old strength of yours and smash that golden mic! Smash that Don't smash it, it's expensive! I gotta play the guitar for another year! Just pay for that golden mic, John! I was joking. John Neral, it's been amazing to have you on episode 135. Y'all, I hope y'all loved it. We're going to answer your questions as we get back to this. And this is what I have for everybody. A question that John and I have for you, who's watching live or on the replay. If you're feeling happy and you're living in your full potential, what is your responsibility to change history for the better? I'm Marc Cordon, my buddy John Neral. This has been the Golden Mic Live. See ya!
Thanks, everybody.